And so you can really be an amazing mom. But if you decide you also want to fill in the gap and be an amazing father and become the visionary leader of the family because your husband's becoming so passive, you're saying, look, that there's an inevitable. You may think that you can fill that gap and you can save your family and save your children from suffering, but there's you probably are going to run into a situation where that's just not going to happen. Like your family will suffer.
Yes. I do believe that. I mean, and I'm saying that out of, experience and out of longevity, like, you can only do this for so long. You can only lead your family, like, as you're saying, like, be the mom and the dad for so long before things start to get really out of whack and out of alignment, and there's confusion for the kids and the husband. You're allowing the husband to go further and further into his passivity if you're just willing to keep on taking more and more on. And so I know that like for me, I'm pretty high on the like capability scale. And so, I call it sometimes like the curse of being capable because I can take it on. So I should like so then I do when really I should push back and say like, hey, I'm finding myself making all these decisions or casting this vision or, um, like I'm walking forward and I'm looking back and you're not there. Like, what and you're not in front of me either, and I'm just, like, leading the kids in this way, and so, holy cow. So I feel like I have done many, many times where I start down, like, some kind of fork in the road or some kind of, choice I make, and I'm a good amount down the road before I realize that you're not with us, and, you're kind of we left you behind because I got tired of waiting for you to make the decision, or I I wanted to do this thing and I didn't think you would want us to go down this path, so I kinda, like, snuck it in there or something like that, and so, inevitably, I started to be able to feel it in my own self when I'm like, "Ooh, I am stepping out of alignment, I would say, with my husband. I just am, like, taking my own little side trail here, and I'm bringing because the mom has so much sway over the kids and, for many, many, many years, you are in charge of what they're doing with their day. You can bring the kids along on that, like, pathway without any trouble. You just do because
Yeah.
that's what you're doing with the day. So I would say that, learning how to if your husband is willing to try to learn how to lead or try to step up, to let him try. And letting your husband try to lead can be very painful, especially if you're capable and like she said in the clip, like, I'm the one who read all the books. I'm the one who, like, I know all these things. And
Yeah.
I think it can be very tricky to let go of that and say, like, hey, okay, I did read the book, but I actually would prefer, I think it's God's best for us if you're the one who leads us down this path, whether that's like a homeschool decision or like an education decision or a decor decision or a location decision, like all of those things. The husband ultimately, I think, would you say this, Jeremy, that like the husband is ultimately the one responsible before the Lord?
Yeah, this is, part of my understanding biblically of authority. Like we have this obsession with authority in our culture that it's purely a privilege, and because it's this amazing privilege, we need to make sure that it's equally experienced, and that we're constantly fighting against creating hierarchies because of that perception. In the Bible, authority is much more a matter of responsibility. Who's going to be held accountable? And so there's a amazing verse in Hebrews 13 which says please submit to your leaders because they are working as people who have to give an account. I mean that so the basis what the author of Hebrews is saying about authority is that you need to have compassion for the fact that that person is going to give an account before God for how they treated that leadership opportunity. And so, as somebody who's under their leadership, if you're second in command or if you're under their leadership, you need to support them because they're going to be responsible. You're responsible for supporting them, but they're responsible for the outcome of the team. And so, that understanding that authority and responsibility have to be perfectly in sync. And therefore, if you have responsibility for something, you need to have authority. Like, what good does it do to, basically say to somebody, you're responsible, but you can't actually have the authority to make any changes. No, that's doesn't work. And what we try to do in our culture is the opposite, which is we give authority without responsibility. Like, I want to have, I want to be in charge. I would like to have the power to do whatever, but I don't want to be held accountable or responsible for the outcome. But those things are really important to have those two things in sync. And in the family, the reason why there is a particular leader in the family isn't so that one person's preferences can rule over the family. It's so that somebody can be held accountable, right? This is the reason why if you and there's a lot of goodness to that structure. This is why you don't tend to see things like, co-coaches on football teams or any kind of sports team that is in a highly competitive situation. You don't see, in an army, they don't inject tons of confusion and who's in charge. They have a very clear chain of command because there are life and death decisions that have to be made. And then if you are trying to lead your family on mission and you're trying to do very difficult things as a family, multi-generationally, then you need to be clear about these lines of authority and responsibility. And I think that part of what I think she said that I think was really helpful is that when you have a husband who, let's say you believe that he's the leader of this family, but he is subtly abdicating the creation of the educational culture, right? He doesn't care. He hasn't read the books. He doesn't want to weigh in, and so the wife tries to make up that gap. What tends to happen over time, this is what you're saying, April, about longevity. A lot of people will argue with us because they have another ideal in their mind. They don't understand how this works. They think that somehow magically whoever takes control or takes the reins is actually going to be successful in crafting the culture. They don't see what this actually looks like 5, 15, 20 years later, which is that over the long term, what begins to occur is whoever actually has control of the culture, their culture actually begins to dominate. And so if the dad has a lackadaisical attitude towards education, then, whoa, what happened? All of a sudden, my son doesn't care that much about education. It's like, but I read the books. I did all the right things. I checked all the boxes. I went to all the co-ops. Yeah. But your husband was the leader and he actually crafted the culture. And in his abdication, that culture is going to seep into your family. And so it doesn't actually work. It doesn't actually work for the wife to take over. This is actually goes all the way back to Genesis 3, where there's this, crazy verse after the fall that that's a part of the curse, which is that it says your desire will be for your husband and he will rule over you.
Right.
It's a fascinating, basically saying that inside the fabric of the way that the world is now going to play out, you're going to desire to, and in the New Living Translation even adds, you'll desire to control your husband, but he will rule over you. It doesn't say control, but it does seem to suggest that there's some kind of usurping that she's going to attempt to do, and it's not going to work. That's basically what God is saying there. And so if it's not going to work, then maybe we need to take a big step back and say, okay, is there a reason? And this is like, there's that very famous accidental study that happened in Switzerland where they discovered that the family over the long term would follow the religious preferences of the father in some crazy high percentage of the time in a way that's completely out of balance to what you would expect his influence is as just another person or member of the household. And even in these hyper egalitarian societies that don't believe in any kind of structure in the family, it just still plays out the same way. And this is what's so frustrating to so many people because they don't understand that there's a basic creation order that the father, that's not just a arbitrary decision. The father has a particular amount of influence over the family, and it's an enormous amount of influence. And so that influence will be felt one way or the other. It will be
Yeah.
felt either in his abdication or is in his active leadership. And so what
Yes.
the wife could do is she could try to use a lot of her strengths, her competencies to attempt to help her husband in the crafting of that culture. But if she tries to overthrow her husband, then it's going to end up backfiring on the family.